28 years later was perfectly set up by two big script changes to the last two movies. The 28 Days Later franchise has always thrived on unpredictability and raw emotional realism, with both 28 Days Later 2002 and its sequel 28 Weeks Later 2007 capturing different but equally haunting perspectives of societal collapse. Now, as 28 Years Later prepares to reintroduce audiences to Danny Boyle's vision of post-apocalyptic Britain, it's becoming clear that two major script changes in the earlier films laid the groundwork for this long-awaited sequel, even if unintentionally. These key decisions didn't just alter the tone and direction of the series at the time, they also cracked open possibilities that 28 Years Later is now perfectly positioned to explore. 1. The original 28 Days Later ending was rewritten, and that changed everything. In 28 Days Later, Jim's Cillian Murphy famously survives alongside Selena and Hannah, and the trio watches a jet fly overhead in a moment of ambiguous hope. But that wasn't how the movie was originally meant to end. The first script, and even a version that was shot, had Jim dying from a gunshot wound after the climactic escape from the military compound. Selena and Hannah are the only two who continue on, left to navigate an uncertain world without their de facto protector. The decision to rewrite this ending and allow Jim to live was a major tonal shift. Instead of closing on despair and sacrifice, Boyle offered a fragile glimmer of recovery. Crucially, it also left Jim's story open-ended. He didn't become a martyr for humanity's sins. He survived, healed, and possibly even found peace for a time. That change opened a door that 28 years later is now walking through. Cillian Murphy is confirmed to return, and his survival only works because the alternate, more hopeful ending became canon. But more than that, the emotional arc of the original film, from trauma to recovery, is now ripe for a full-circle evolution. After 28 years, can Jim's hope survive in a world where the virus has likely returned, mutated, or evolved? That question wouldn't carry nearly as much weight if he had died in the first film. Even more interestingly, Danny Boyle has hinted that 28 Years Later will take a global perspective. By keeping Jim alive, the franchise has a direct link to its emotional core. He's not just a familiar face, he's a survivor who has witnessed every chapter of this nightmare. His presence suggests that the human story is still central to the chaos, and his fate may reflect the overarching message of the entire trilogy. 2. 28 Weeks Later scrapped its original ending and set the stage for global collapse. If 28 Days Later ended on a cautiously optimistic note, 28 Weeks Later undid that with chilling finality. The sequel, directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, concluded with a now infamous shot. The rage-infected have reached mainland Europe, as evidenced by the haunting imagery of the Eiffel Tower surrounded by chaos. It was a gut-punch ending that suggested the outbreak was no longer confined to Britain. Humanity was losing. But that ending wasn't part of the original script. In earlier drafts, the outbreak was recontained. The children, Andy and Tammy, were meant to be the potential carriers of a dormant form of the virus, but the idea of it spreading to Europe was left more ambiguous. The rewrite that showed the infection reaching France was a late-in-the-game decision that dramatically changed the scale of the story. This altered ending redefined the stakes for the franchise. Suddenly, rage wasn't just a British crisis. It was a global threat, one that would inevitably evolve. That change transformed 28 Weeks Later from a self-contained horror film into the middle chapter of a larger dystopian saga. It's no coincidence that 28 Years Later seems to be expanding the scope even further, with reports that the new film will examine how the virus impacted different regions over decades. The European has a legacy to build on.